Black Dog. Ed Skinner's old Freightliner semi roared to life in the driveway of his rural home. He was about to leave on a cross-country trucking haul, and his two teenage sons, Carl and Garrett, stood behind the truck to see him off. "Where are you headed?" asked Garrett, the younger of the brothers. "All the way out to Pasadena. I'll be back in about a week," replied Ed, leaning on his arm in the open window. "There's plenty of canned food, maybe some TV dinners. Stay out of trouble, okay? And go to school." Garrett and Carl both snickered. "I suppose you'll want to hunt while I'm gone, huh?" continued Ed. The Skinners liked to hunt. In fact, they had to hunt if they wanted good protein. With Ed's trucking gigs only pulling in part-time money, the family made do with what little they had. "That's fine by me. Just be careful and keep things tidy around here, especially your rifles." Carl and Garrett both nodded, and Ed shifted into drive. "Oh, and don't hunt at night. You got me?" He eyed Carl when he said it. "Yeah, Dad," said Garrett. Ed waved goodbye and drove to the end of the bumpy driveway, turning onto the long country road. Carl and Garrett watched as the truck disappeared behind one of the rolling country hills. Not long after, the boys were in the kitchen heating condensed soup on the gas stove in their small cabin. "I'm sick of eating this cream of whatever, dog's drool soup," said Carl. "Let's get a big fat doe, or even try for that buck you said you saw the other day after school tomorrow. Something we can strip quick and eat all week until Dad comes home." "I'm down," said Garrett. The brothers spent the rest of the evening watching TV and taking swigs from a bottle of whiskey Ed kept in the garage. When they got home from school the next day, they grabbed a couple rifles from their dad's gun cabinet, hopped in the family pickup, and drove through the pastures and open fields leading to the woods behind their home. It was mid-November, and the brothers had only a couple hours of daylight left to hunt. Carl drove the truck through the field, parking near the tree line. Each carrying a rifle, they entered the woods. Their boots crunched over dry brown leaves, and they walked amidst dead trees and brush, making their way to their tree stand. Carl taking the lead, they climbed up the aluminum ladder and took a seat. A half hour of whispered shit-talking and recollecting had passed when Carl nudged Garrett in the side and said, "Psst, over there." Garrett looked to where Carl was pointing to see a buck eating some acorns about 90 yards off. "Shit, looks like 8 points at least," whispered Carl, adjusting his position in the stand and readying his rifle. "Can you get it from here?" asked Garrett. "Nah, he's got to come closer. We'll have to wait." Another hour passed as the brothers waited in silence. The buck came a little closer but was still at too odd an angle for a clean shot, and the sky had darkened considerably. "Carl, it's getting late. You heard what Dad said," whispered Garrett. "Yeah, I heard what Dad said. Come on, it's not that dark. We've almost got him." "I don't even know how'd you hit it anyway, seeing how dark it is. I think we should head home. We'll try again tomorrow." "Tomorrow? This buck probably won't be here. Just hold up." "But Dad said, don't hunt at night," said Carl. "He just said that so we wouldn't shoot each other. Dad hunts at night." Carl then put his fingers to his lips. Garrett sighed and sat back in the stand as Carl held his position. Several more minutes passed before Garrett noticed the movement of some creature to the west. There was scant light and the thing was a considerable distance away, but Garrett was sure what he had spotted. "Carl, I think I see a dog or something," he whispered nervously. "Huh? Jesus, it was big. Maybe it was the black dog, the one Dad told us about." "There ain't no black dog, you dummy," said Carl, picking up his rifle and sitting back next to his brother. "It's one of his stories. Did you see the white lady too?" "No, I swear, black dog, no hunting at night. Dad just tells us this stuff to keep us out of trouble and to mess with us. You didn't see any black dog. It was probably a coyote or a fox. But it was too big to be a coyote. Sit back, shut up, and let me take care of this buck, unless you want to suck down chicken with stars and stale bread all week." The sky had gone black by the time Carl had the buck lined up for a clean shot. The animal was only 30 yards away, off to the right now. Carl mouthed, "Got him! to his brother and steadied his rifle, released a nervous breath, paused, then pulled the trigger. The shot cracked and echoed throughout the woods, and Garrett clenched next to his brother. I got it! Yelled Carl, looking through his scope at the buck, which now lay flat on the leafy ground. Woo! Let's go! Carl hurried down the ladder, Garrett following close behind. They were venturing out finally into the dark evening, and all Garrett could think about was the dark-furred creature he had seen. Up in the tree stand, he had felt some semblance of safety, real or imagined. But when his feet hit the soft ground, he looked for movement in every direction, while Carl beelined toward his kill. When they got to the buck, Carl hollered, This thing's huge! He slapped his brother on the back. Garrett only managed a, Yeah, it's great, man. The two dragged the heavy carcass through the woods toward the tree line. They were nearing the break and could just make out the outline of their pickup in the distance when they heard twigs cracking and leaves rustling far off behind them. Garrett looked up from their shore and got a quick glimpse of a four-legged creature running between deadfall and underbrush about 40 yards off. What is that? Asked Garrett, pausing. Keep moving, said Carl, and they dragged the deer another few feet. I saw it too. It's the blood. Don't say it, interjected Carl. They continued with the 8-point buck, finally reaching the tree line. Go get the truck, said Carl. Why do I gotta go, whined Garrett. Someone needs to stay with the buck and make sure whatever that thing is, it don't take a big bite out of it. I didn't spend hours in that cramped up stand to lose our dinner to some scavenger. Now go! Hurry! Garrett ran out of the woods and into the field, his fear nipping at his heels. When he reached the truck, he heard his brother scream. He quickly got in and it started rough, but he gunned it toward the tree line. The pickup bounced over the uneven ground. His rifle fell off the seat beside him and the headlights swept over the barren field, finally shining on the buck and then Carl. In the glow of the yellow light lay his older brother. A black shape was on top of him, mauling him. Seeing his brother and Pearl, Garrett slammed on the gas and sped into the tree line, stopping only yards from the scene of the struggle. Quickly, he grabbed his rifle and stepped out of the truck. Carl's screams made him jittery, almost spastic in movement. He nearly froze, seeing his brother's desperate yet futile attempts to beat the dog away. It was a large black dog, all right. Garrett swallowed his fear, steadying himself, raised his rifle to his shoulder in one smooth motion, and fired one round at the dog. He heard a deep, ungodly yelp and watched as the creature leapt away from his brother and disappeared outside the radius of the headlights. Garrett helped Carl up and into the truck, and they rode back down to the house in silence. When they got inside, Garrett inspected Carl's arms under the kitchen light. There were teeth marks up and down his wrist and forearm. It looks like a dog bite, said Garrett. You should probably go get a rabies shot or something. I've never seen or felt a dog like that before, said Carl, wincing at the pain. That thing was strong, but you got him good, man. The mutt's probably curled up dead and cold by now. Thanks. Both brothers looked out the kitchen window, then toward the dark fields and forests, wondering if it was still out there. They ended up going to the clinic that night to get Carl's arm wrapped properly. The medical staff gave him a series of shots and sent him home. It was a rainy, restless night for the boys back at the cabin. The coyote calls that evening held a special significance for them. Not that they felt more menacing or that the brothers felt any kind of threat from the small scavengers, but it almost felt like the forest wasn't as far off as it used to be. The next morning was a Saturday. Carl and Garrett walked back to the tree line to check out the status of the deer carcass and whatever had attacked Carl. When they reached the spot, however, all they found was a stripped carcass. The buck had been picked clean during the night, head to tail. A few flies buzzed around what little remained of the hide. Holy shit, said Carl. There's nothing left. Check out those teeth marks, though. He pointed out some large marks on the ribs and leg bones. Where's the dog? Asked Garrett, eyes searching. Whatever he had shot the night before certainly didn't die nearby. Dude, check it out, said Carl, pointing out a trail of footprints leading from the deer and into the woods. Let's go home, said Garrett, looking deep into the forest. The vision of the dog attacking his brother seared into his mind. The duo walked the perimeter of the kill site to make sure the dog hadn't just crawled into a nearby bush or deadfall, but found nothing. They soon headed back to the house for breakfast. Carl took out a can of condensed tomato soup from the cupboard. Guess we're stuck with this. Think those prints were from the dog? Said Garrett. It was a dog, I guess, mumbled Carl, emptying the contents of the can into a pot on the stove. The conversation was interrupted by the front door abruptly opening. Carl and Garrett both stopped what they were doing and looked at each other, waiting for the other to move. Ed wasn't due home for a few more days, and nobody ever stopped by. To their relief, they heard their father call out in the hallway, "I'm back." Seconds later, the older man stood at the kitchen doorway smiling. His eyes were bloodshot, and heavy bags hung under them. He looked as if he had driven home on no sleep. "Dad, you're back already?" said Garrett, relieved at his father's presence. "How'd you do it? Pasadena and back in just a couple days." Ed didn't reply. He came into the kitchen hobbling, wincing at each step. "Dad, you all right?" asked Carl, as his father limped toward the table. As Ed came further into the kitchen, his sons got an unobstructed view of their father. He was wearing the same outfit he'd driven off in the other day, a ball cap, flannel shirt, blue jeans. But their eyes were drawn to tufts of black fur that poked out from beneath his dirty, torn pants, and then onto his large, canid feet, or paws. Sternly, Ed looked over his two boys who stood stock still, mouths agape. "I thought I told you two to stay out of the woods at night,"